Catalin, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hello everybody, my name is Catalin Filip, and today I'll present you our struggle in building a functional exploit on Magento. Magento is an e-commerce app for shopping and just for buying things. This is our today's agenda. We will go through a bit on what is Magento and what are the product implications, and in the end we will continue with a live demo of how we did this exploit. First of all, who am I? My name is Catalin Filip. I've studied at Military Technical Academy. After that, I was at Universitatea Politehnica Bucharest. I do like to pawn things, to do reverse engineering exploits, and I'm a big fan of Formula 1, Lewis Hamilton. And currently I'm working at Pentest Tools. There I found a nice team, and we did a lot of things together. So let's unpack a bit our CVE. It's all about an improper input validation, like most of the CVEs on the market, which leads to a remote code execution vulnerability. How it started? Well, it all started with a lot of fakes. If you are on this subject, you could find at that time when this vulnerability was published that a lot of fakes were on GitHub. If you notice there, it is an endpoint where the exploit should happen, but if you look a bit upper, you can see that this is not the true PoC. Or a lot of content was hidden. Other companies did this research and they just showed that on Twitter, and somehow they make fun of us. So this is for setting. After all, what is Magento? Magento is an e-commerce platform basically written in PHP. It's open source, and it was acquired by Adobe, and it has 2.3% of market share of global commerce platforms. What about Adobe? Adobe practically bought Magento. They integrated that in their product, Adobe e-commerce, and they had several versions. And those versions allowed us to buy things like in 3 user types, like guests, administrators, or customer. Why we chose this? Because it's widely used, it's open source, and also it represents a challenge for us, and we said that we can make this happen. Okay, now let's have a bit of technical data. Before we dig in, I want to mention my sniper team. We do a lot of things there, a lot of security researches. We have a product. Our product practically scans for vulnerabilities and exploits targets. And after all of this, we clean up things because we don't want somebody else to take advantage of what we've done there. And because we like automated reports, and the pen tester should not write reports anymore. The steps we took to do this was practically the deployment of our Magento. We did a bit of store configuration because the exploit happens when we try to buy something. We set up the environment. Here we had a little struggle with the xdebug configs to make a debugging environment working. And after that, we did a lot of research, crashing, and testing to achieve our goal. We started by following the patch. You could see there that when the vulnerability was disclosed by Adobe, they immediately come up with a patch which practically added sanitizations to our input. If you see here, they have a pattern which practically, if it is found in a string of user input, it just deletes that. So we thought that this is our point of start. We tested this. We found that directive, which in the current version of Magento, which was the one it could be exploited, we found that the patch wasn't there normally, and we could see there that patterns, that commas we could put there, and we could practically do whatever we want with the input of the text. This is the exploit flow. Practically after that trans directive part of code, we somehow end up in a sequence of code where the Magento tries to resolve some variables, and also it tries to find out if a method exists on an object, or here it is that part. Okay. After that, if an object is found on a Magento app, it's created and further is sent to a handler which practically tries to resolve all the methods of that object. Our goal was to reach a function which is called a magic function in PHP, because magic functions could lead to remote code execution, and if we could do some input like we wanted to do, we could end up here and call user func, which has two parameters, callback and value. If we could modify those values, we could practically reach our remote code execution thing. Just change it. Now we'll start with the demo part. This is our shop. It's a custom Magento store. I've put there some watches. You can't find a Rolex at $1,000. Okay, do you hear me? Yes. So, first of all, we tried to find a perfect payload for us. This is the backend of the Magento store. As I said before, we run our debugger, and we tried several inputs till we reached a flow. So we did that normal part. We put an object to the cart. We had some values here. Sorry for this, but okay. Just random values. Because all the vulnerability is produced in the first name and last name fields. It may be possible to happen in other fields, but we didn't try to test all of that fields because our scope was to find the public PoC. Sorry. Okay, now I'll present you our first try of finding the PoC. We will see that in the filter function, we see that Magento tries to change paths or find objects using this kind of template. So we said, why we can't do that to access what templates we want. So somehow we could do that. Okay. I just have to continue till we buy that thing. Okay. Let's go again, and this time we will put our first try of payload. you have to input a proper email address or to have that Gmail thing. And I'll pass that because it's faster. Okay. So this was our, you could see that? This was our first try of exploiting this thing. And we wanted to see if we could redirect our code flow wherever we want. Okay. Here we go again. Now, we could see that we reach that section of code which checks for our method if it exists. If we watch on the values, we could see that the method practically is this, and args was load. Hopefully, here we find out that our code reaches this part of the Magento, and from here now we could do some other things to exploit this. Okay. And nothing happens because in our presentation I've showed you that we have to reach that magical function which calls a call function array with our specific values. This exploit didn't work, but we also try to find where these methods were. And we could find that we could get there by practically calling a lot of other methods, which gives us an object which has these methods implemented. So the next flow, we thought that what if we will give this function gives us an object, and after that, we tried somehow to call this function. This function was in that object. It's a public function. It could be called. But our goal was to reach here. This function is a protected one, and we could not get this one. So in order to reach this, we can see that it's called from here. Here, this function also is a public function. So a protected method it cannot be called directly. It is called by another function from that object. So in the end, our exploit was something like this. Okay, let's continue shopping. We need to check out our product. Okay. Here we go again. Now we see that we are again at this part of the code. If we look at stack args, we can see that we have again this time our value is in the variable category. We see that it has another method like getTemplateFilter with arguments, but they are none because we didn't put something there. We have another method with the system argument, also the last method, which was the filter, which should call our magic function with whoami parameter. But if we go next, we can see that our object is handled here. It calls add after filter callback. We can see that after filter callback, it has the parameter which we gave it, it was system. Now it's time to call the filter method with the specific argument whoami. And we end up to that magic function. But if we watch to the parameters, we see that the callback array, it has another object and another value from the Magento environment, and our value just whoami. We cannot see the system present here. So this thing won't work. So next was our question, how we can solve that? And our first thought was, why don't we put the same payload again to change it a bit? Sorry. Let's take that again. I will put the ID command because it shows us a lot of things. Let's double check. Yep. Okay. Here we are again. Now, practically, we are resolving the first part of the payload, the one which didn't work and put some bad things on our callback variable. If you watch, we can see that the same things are here, but if we continue that, we see that we end up again in our handle data object method. And practically now we are solving the second part of our payload. We see again that we have add after filter callback here. We add again our variable system. Now we have again our filter method. And we end up here with our desired values. We have we see that we have in callback system and value we have ID. So if you just step forward, we can see in the value that we have practically our code executed and we are daemon on that box. Yeah, and this thing is also reflected in the Burp suite if you watch it. I'll show you a bit in my browser how it is reflected. Okay. In the inspector, we will see the request, which will be to the payment information. I'll make it a little bit bigger. This is the true endpoint of our exploits, the one which bothered us from the beginning. And the response is practically our comment. So that was our PoC exploitation and development from Sniper Tools. Thank you.
All right, if we have any questions for Catalin regarding this?
Yep.
Did you start from the magic method or the other way around with the input?
We kind of look from that what was added to that to the patch, and we tried to figure out how Magento solves things, and we practically started to find magic methods, and that was the first part we wanted, because
so you looked at what was fixed?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I hope that I've answered.
Thank you for the presentation. In your testing, did you discover any additional vulnerabilities?
No. Could you repeat that, please?
In your testing, did you discover any additional vulnerabilities?
Yes, I forgot to mention, on some publications, they said that it could be some SQL injection going around this. We found something like that, but we thought that that might be a next step for us, and we kind of look from several methods like load, delete. We find some parts of the code which interacts with the DB, and we end up to that phase where we try to do some query with delete. Don't ask me why we did that. And we just crashed our system, and we thought that is not good for us. But it's possible to have SQL injections. We somehow triggered an error for that thing, but we didn't pursue that because, like I've said before, we tried to find those magic functions because it was PHP, and that was our way of doing things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If we don't have any other questions, thank you so much, Catalin, for your presentation. A lot of pressure to do a live demo. Thank you. Give it up for Catalin.